Hallo Studentin, I'm Laura Bennett with German with Laura, and in this video we want to look at the question, how fast can I learn the German language? This video is part of a larger series, Learning the German Language, the Essential Beginner's Guide, but this video does also stand on its own. Before we can answer that question, we have to first look at a related question, which is, what does it mean to speak German? Or what does it mean to be proficient or even fluent in German? And there are a lot of misconceptions around this topic. The first thing that you need to understand is that there are two types of vocabulary. I want you to picture with me an iceberg. Only a little bit of the iceberg is above the surface of the water, and the majority of it is underneath the surface. That part of the iceberg is passive vocabulary, and above the surface of the water is active vocabulary. What this means is that you will understand a lot more vocabulary than you use. And this will also be true as you learn to speak German. So not only should you reasonably expect that you will understand a lot more German than you actually use yourself in writing or in speaking, but this gets even better yet because the definitions of fluency in a foreign language are that even when you have a third of the vocabulary of a native speaker, you're still considered fluent, right? So basically, your iceberg is a third of the size of a native speaker's, and yet that's still considered fluent. Another concept that's very important to keep in mind as you're building your German iceberg of vocabulary is that just like you're never going to know all the words that exist in the English language, you're never going to know all of the words that exist in German either, neither do native German speakers, and you need to be really focused on the vocabulary that you're actually going to use. If you are a professor and you give all sorts of academic talks, you're going to have to know very specialized vocabulary. If you are a car mechanic, that's other specialized vocabulary. If you are a doctor, a musician, a lawyer, and you want to be able to talk about those same things in German, that's a lot of very specialized vocabulary. But we don't have to learn all of those words if they don't apply to us. So it's really important in this larger conversation of how fast can I learn to speak German that you think about the life that you lead, the words that you use in English, the topics that you talk about in English, and make sure that you are focusing your time on learning those same words in German. Now, in previous videos on other misconceptions about how to learn German, we've talked about how it's actually really inefficient and ineffective to throw yourself into the deep end and try to figure out the German language as you go along, that you'll actually save yourself a lot of time, not to mention frustration, if you appropriately start off in the kiddie pool and step by step gradually build up to being out in the deep end. And that important truth ties us into the very common misconception that adults learn more slowly than children, that it's going to take adults longer to learn a foreign language than a child would do it. And studies have actually shown that when you look at the number of hours put into learning a language, adults can learn infinitely faster than children can. And that's partly because children, in a way, have no choice but to be thrown into the deep end and learn how to sink or swim. And adults, in contrast, we can take this very analytical approach. We can have a step-by-step technical process for learning language, which is much, much faster. We had to do the deep end approach when we were learning our native language. That's what everyone has to do. But since we have our native language under our belts, we can now apply our understanding of grammar structures and just our vocabulary that we already have. We can use all of that to our advantage to learn German much, much faster than a child can. So now, to really black and white answer this question, how long is it going to take? How quickly can I be fluent in German? Of course, there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all answer, but I can say that it's all about how you go about it. If you know how to intentionally practice, if you make sure that you're in the zone of high efficiency applied learning, which we talked about earlier in this series, you will learn the fastest possible. And it could take you a matter of months, maybe even weeks. It's about how many hours you can put in a given day, in a given week. But if you do it right, it doesn't have to take you years before you're having those desired conversations in German. So now there are 4 key impediments to learning German as quickly as possible. We've talked about 2 of them already in previous videos, and those are the misconceptions that using the instant immersion method is a good idea, and that speaking right away, creating your own German utterances right from the beginning is an efficient process. It's not. So now we have 2 final impediments or hindrances that we need to be aware of so we can avoid them so that you can learn to speak German as quickly as possible. In the next video, we're going to look at the question, when is it appropriate to translate and when not? When is it going to help you and when is it getting in the way? So you can click here to continue to the next video in this series, or if you haven't yet watched from the beginning, click here instead. We're going to talk about YouTube videos, popular apps and software programs, and the pitfalls of them that I see so many students fall into. You need to avoid those pitfalls so that you can actually achieve your goal of learning to speak German.